Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Censored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have Only the Best Tax Money Can Buy, posted by Donald Key, and that's cross-post from the military subreddit, and that says, U.S. soldiers practicing for Trump's birthday parade this weekend. And yeah, as I went into in the last episode, I personally don't think the U.S. government should be blowing money on a parade, even though, it's not technically for Trump's birthday, it's for the founding of the U.S. military, which was 250 years ago from the day of the parade yesterday, so that would be July, or June 14th, 1775. But, I definitely think it's interesting how Reddit, that they think it's the worst thing ever, even though, it's just a parade that, no one really cares that much about, and eventually they'll just move on to whatever the next outrage bait is. That's kind of Reddit for you. It's always whatever this week's rage bait is, and yeah, that's pretty much also with me at this point. It's always whatever the current rage bait is, and then people just move on to the next rage bait. And yeah, let's see. Next we have a protester yells out the amount of money different NYPD police officers have cost the city in lawsuits. The city paid out $206 million in police misconduct lawsuits last year, posted by Patom13, and that's a cross post from the Public Freakout subreddit. It looks like a TikTok video of a guy doing exactly that, yelling out all the amount of money NYPD spent over the year in lawsuits. And yeah, personally, I wouldn't go agitating agents of the state like that, since as I always like to say, the state has the legal monopoly on use of force. So if you agitate them too much, they might attack you, and if they do, there might be no recourse for you. And yeah, so that's my thoughts on that issue. But of course, average Redditor, they always gotta bring attention to themselves, so they'll always try and agitate everyone who is ever a member of the outgroup. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have those pesky facts posted by Ragnar OKXP, and that looks like a post from Aaron Rupar, who posted, Bayer, isn't this embarrassing? Besant, you seem to not to have seen the economic data. GDP growth has been quite substantial. Bayer, GDP growth is half what it was last year, sir. Besant, job growth is solid. Bayer, job growth was a third of what was last year, sir. And of course, yeah, Reddit, I think it's interesting. Reddit says, oh, we love the LGBTQ plus community, but this post is going over how Besant, who's the Secretary of the Treasury and an openly gay man, is bad and lying because he's a Republican and is serving in a Republican administration. And that just goes to show you how, Reddit loves you if you confirm to all their biases, like if you're LGBTQ, disabled, a minority, etc., etc. But if you ever do a wrong thing or join the outgroup, then suddenly you're the worst thing ever, and all your in-group traits become irrelevant. You could be gay like the Secretary of the Treasury is currently, but if you dare join the outgroup, like he did when he joined since he's a member of the Republican Party and serving in the Trump administration, then suddenly you're the worst thing ever. And that just goes to show you how, these people only have teams. They don't have any values whatsoever, only who's in the in-group, who's in the out-group. Then we have Army commissions tech executives from Meta and Palantir as lieutenant colonels from taskandpurpose.com, hosted by LegioX. And yeah, I personally don't really care for the big business like Meta and Palantir, or I don't really care for the Army either. But ultimately, if the government wants to make contracts with whoever it wants to, that's on them. It's just important to be aware that big business and big government are often intertwined, and this is a good example of that. Then we have Hegseth, the head of the United States military forces, could answer what is legal authority under which he is sending active duty Marines to California, posted by Donald Key, and that's a cross post from the Law subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't care for sending the Marines to a civilian area, even if it is rioting. But ultimately, if the government wants to send them there, they have the legal monopoly use of force to do so. And of course, I'm sure if it was a MAGA riot rather than a woke riot, Reddit would be all over it. If it was the Biden administration doing so, but since it's the Trump administration doing so and Republican doing so, it's suddenly the worst thing ever. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have WTF, is there still a Libertarian Party? And that's a screenshot, and that's posted by Dina B. Free, 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 free. And they said, from Mike Termat, campaign at gmail.com, date June 12, 2015, subject line, joining the Republican Liberty Caucus. The great battle over time is coming to a head, and I plan to win. And then the OP added, no, now we're all supposed to remember the RLC. Good grief. And yeah, Termat was the Libertarian Party vice presidential nominee last year. I personally don't think he should be running over to the Republican Party, even if you are doing it to resist the Trump people. But if he wants to justify doing that, that's on him. I personally think it's probably better to be in a third party because it's easier to find a footing and you can be more principled that way. But if he wants to run over to the GOP, that's okay too. Justify doing whatever you want to. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have thoughts on Liberal Party USA, posted by International Newt 76, and they said, I just stumbled across the Liberal Party USA's website. Looks like what the Libertarian Party used to be, a party for classical liberals and bleeding heart libertarians. Thoughts, and then they linked to liberalpartyusa.org. And yeah, personally, I think all the Libertarian parties should probably be together. I don't think we should have any infighting between them. But if people don't like the current Libertarian Party and want to form their own party like they do with the Liberal Party, I think they should be able to. I just think we should probably not have all this infighting and just be one big party. Because even if we're all united, we're still going to be a drop in the pond compared to the GOP and the Dems. But if they want to run out and start their own party, that's on them. People will justify whatever they want to justify. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Taco Trump caves on home immigration plan in wild about face. The president has told ICE to pause raids on farms, hotels, and restaurants from dailybeast.com, hosted by Donald Key. And yeah, that's another Orange Man bad post. Yeah, if you don't like what Orange Man's saying, we'll probably go back on it sooner rather than later. So, yeah, that's why, that's all politicians for you. They'll flip-flop whenever it's convenient. Then we have No King's protest against the Trump administration in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, posted by CH4Locks, and that's cross-post from the Public Freakout subreddit. It looks like a bunch of people on the streets in Philly just walking along the protest route. And I like what Full Mouse 8971 said in response. These are DNC pawns. They just want their king in power. If it was a no masters protest, I'd join, but these people are not principled. And I'd agree with that. There wouldn't be a no king's protest if Joe Biden was still in power. Because, Joe Biden, he did a lot of authoritarian stuff as well, but they didn't care. But then suddenly the Orange Man took power again, and suddenly, it's all about resisting authority. And yeah, they don't want, they just want their own king in power. They don't care that it's not a no king's protest. It would be more accurately be entitled an Orange Man bad protest. And we've been at that for pretty much 10 years now. Tomorrow is the 10th anniversary of him going down the golden escalator and saying I'm running for president in 2016. So eventually, if you want to protest, that's fine. But eventually, you just have to learn to cope. I would say, especially since we've been doing this for 10 years now, pretty much. Then we have empty crowd at Trump's birthday parade. All you hear is the squeaking tanks, posted by CH4Locks, and that's across most of the One Moss subreddit. And yeah, I think it's interesting how it's one of the key elements of fascism. That they say is the enemy is both strong and weak, and they always say Trump's this extreme strong man, but then they post stuff like this saying, "Oh, he's weak. No one wants to go to his parade," and that just goes to show you how they're not principled. They always say, "Oh, our enemy is the strong soldiers who are going to take us out any day now." Well, they're also these weak pansies who will drop over any day now, and yeah, eventually you just get tired of it. Then we have 5 things $45 million could pay for instead of a military parade from SPCLcenter.org, posted by Donald Key. And yeah, I think the SPCL is pretty much openly an arm of the DNC. I definitely do think that $45 million could have gone to something better, but the SPLC is clearly just has an agenda. I'm sure if Biden had a military parade, they wouldn't be posting them like this. They'd be posting about how it's the greatest thing ever. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. It's as I say, it just matters who's in the in-group, who's in the out-group. Most people don't have values; they only have teams. Well, some people have values, but they're few and far between. Then we have Trump caught on hot mic saying he wants people to behave like North Koreans when he speaks. posted by Swamp Yankee Dan. That's a cross post from the Stock Bet subreddit. And yeah, Trump says a lot of dumb stuff, and he's been saying that stuff for dumb stuff for 10 years now. But the average Redditor just keeps taking the bait, and you get tired of it after a while. You can't take the bait every time. If it's like fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 100 million times, maybe I deserve to be fooled. And the average Redditor definitely deserves to be fooled, I would say, at this point, if they keep taking the bait every single time. Then we have lawsuit alleges secretly altered vote machines stole election from Kamala Harris from WesternJournal.com, posted by Swamp Yankee Dan, and that's a cross post from the art to the art from the law subreddit. And yeah, I thought it was interesting. After 2020, you couldn't question the presidential elections at all, or you were an election denier. But now the front page right's full of election denial, saying, "Oh, Kamala won. All the voting machines are rigged," and that just goes to show you how people don't have values, only teams. When the outgroup was denying denying the results of the 2020 election, they were QAnon freaks. But now, when Reddit does it, it's completely fine. And yeah, personally, if you want to deny the results of election, to believe whoever you want one. You shouldn't be forced to accept any election result if you don't feel like it. But with that being said, I remember that, as I said, 2020, it was the worst thing ever, but now it's completely fine, because their party lost instead of won. And yeah, it just goes to show you these people have no values other than Orange Man bad, Democrats good. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.